Homeland Security Secretary Alejandro Mayorkas is facing a lot of tough questions on Capitol Hill right now, many of them about a chilling new report on the border crisis and its impact on unaccompanied migrant children. The New York Times out with this new report revealing an alarming increase in migrant children forced to work brutal jobs in this country, and that the White House and federal agencies knew about it, but they turned a blind eye. The paper writing this: over the past 2 years, more than 250,000 migrant children have come alone to the United States. Thousands of children have ended up in punishing jobs across the country, working overnight in slaughterhouses, replacing roofs, operating machinery in factories, all in violation of child labor laws, a recent Times investigation showed. All along, there were signs of the explosive growth of this labor force and warnings that the Biden administration ignored or missed it. The administration is pushing back on the reporting. The Times writes HHS officials said the department vetted sponsors sufficiently, but could not control what happened to children after they were released. Officials at the Labor Department said inspectors had increased their focus on child labor and shared details about workers with HHS, but said it was not a welfare agency. And White House officials said that while the two departments had passed along information about migrant child labor, the reports were not flagged as urgent and did not make the scope of the problem clear. Lawmakers at today's hearing brought up the report.
We have no idea who those people are, what kind of security they risk. You're not giving me any stats whatsoever in terms of the number of people that are human trafficked, how many young girls are sex trafficked. You don't have a clue. You wouldn't even answer how many dead bodies, which is very well documented, at the border. Do you not care? Do you not have just an ounce of human compassion for what your open border policy, the type of human depredations it is causing? You just sit there looking with a blank look on your face and you're saying it's a priority.
250,000 children have come Ainsley. Let's talk about a little boy named Antonio. He had to drop out of school. He had to work at a refrigeration factory. These were the conditions. Antonio, he was placed, by the way, with a sponsor in Florida. No one ever checked up on him. He said he went days sometimes without having any contact with anyone. He said this, or this is the summation of it: instead of continuing to 9th grade, Antonio found the job packing vegetables. He worked numbing shifts that left him chilled each night, even though he wore the heaviest jacket he could afford. And the obscene part to me, Ainsley, is that the reports of this allegedly made it to Xavier Becerra's desk. Cabinet secretary and senior White House officials were shown evidence of exploitation, such as clusters of migrant children who'd been found working with industrial equipment or caustic chemicals. They did nothing about it.
And that's only one child, Kayleigh. This is an account from Linda Brand-Miller. If you have a chance to read the article, I highly recommend it. It's hard to read because we all love our children and can't imagine as a mom sending my little girl to another country by herself. Some of these little kids on the side of the road holding a teddy bear, crying, asking for mom or dad, picking them up in the Rio Grande, in the water, swimming by themselves. It's really sad. And Linda Brand-Miller had a heart for these children. She started working in the arena in San Antonio that was converted to a shelter. Her job was to vet these sponsors. She said she flagged this one man who came and said, "I need 3 boys to work at my construction company." She contacted the government supervisors and said, "This is urgent," in an email. She never heard back. Another Florida man wanted 2 kids and would have worked off, because he says they need to come and live with me, to work off the cost we're being charged to bring them up from Mexico or from Guatemala. And he was one of the ones who got the 14-year-old boy that you were talking about. And she sent another email, immediate attention, and then she was fired. She let her direct supervisor know in San Antonio, and her key card or whatever was removed, and she was fired from the job.
That's what you call stepping on a whistleblower.
5 HHS officials fired, in fact, 5. It's astonishing. Ian, one thing that caught my attention in this article was an account about Susan Rice. We all know, big White House advisor, huge role in the administration. Here's what it said. In 2021, as images of children sleeping under foil blankets in overflow centers dominated the news, Susan E. Rice, the White House's head of domestic policy, told staff members she was frustrated with the situation, according to 5 people who worked with her. Miss Rice vented in a note she scribbled on a memo detailing the position of advocates who believed a pandemic-era border closure exposure was compelling parents to send unaccompanied children, called UCs. This is BS, Ms. Rice wrote, according to a copy of the memo reviewed by The Times. What is leading to voluntary separation is our generosity. Now, the White House denies this, but this is essentially, if true, her admitting that they've incentivized all of these problems.
Well, and they have. And if you go back to the Trump administration and look at what HHS does, HHS is responsible for resettling children that come across the border in America. And you get all these people come in and they say they're family members. And, some of them may be family members, but some of them may be involved in human trafficking. Some of them are smugglers that are putting them in these workplaces. Now, the Trump administration was able to get the border under control. So it was a disincentive for smugglers to really go through. But then the Biden administration comes in and wipes all those policies out. So what do you expect as you now have an incentive for smugglers? And most of these kids are between 13 and 18 and can work. So you go there and maybe you say that, oh, I'm a parent, I'm a cousin, I'm an uncle, but you're maybe not. And then they come in and they get involved in all these other activities, and we have absolutely no way to track them. And that is what happened. As a result of Biden really erasing those very effective Trump border policies, now we're dealing with this situation.
And Harris, we've covered on Outnumbered the plight of migrant children. It's been reported CBS, migrant children endure despair and isolation, reports of them eating raw, uncooked chicken. We've covered it here, and the Biden administration essentially turned a blind eye, although AOC had those tearful pictures at the border.
Yeah, what you said was really, I don't want people to miss what you said. They could be somebody who's picking those kids up who are on a list, and they could also be people who are going to sex traffic them, so on. Two things can be true. I mean, that's what's really sad about this. Senator Blackburn of Tennessee first brought to our coverage over a year ago those surreptitious flights into her state. Since then, she has been really on the case to figure out what happened to those children in particular, because there were so many flights coming in the middle of the night just in her state alone. But across the country, New Jersey, my state, just landing at 2 o'clock with little ones this big getting off the plane. Not attached to anybody who might be on a list. Here's Senator Blackburn from last hour on The Focus.
We know that Health and Human Services Office of Refugee Resettlement has completely lost track of 85,000 children that have come into this country. We know that you've got over 250,000 unaccompanied alien children, and they can't find 85,000 of them. You referenced the whistleblower, and what we're hearing is that many of these children are going to individuals who want to use them as child labor. This is something that has to stop.
Has to stop. So how do you stop it? Well, first of all, you got to go find 85,000 kids.
Yeah.
And second of all, you've got to figure out, well, what is happening at the border such that those children don't get special attention? I thought this was the administration that was going to be different. Remember, we don't put kids in cages. Well, actually, that was Obama, so let's get the facts straight on that. But we're not going to separate. Remember, Trump got so much grief and criticism about the separation of children. This administration said we're going to be different. Well, they're not separating them. They're completely whole body, whole cloth losing them. They're losing thousands of children who already were disadvantaged when they came. They already were up against it. They'd been in the arms of cartels. Who knows what their treks had been. And you're going to further normalize abuse, further their pain, by putting them in basically slave conditions in this country. To labor at the hands of someone who picks them up.
And AOC, she found time to shed tears at the border during the Trump era. Where is she now? Where is Vice President Kamala Harris visiting these facilities, checking on these children?
Well, it's because all of that, those crocodile tears, were performative activism. It's performative compassion. And it's the amount of compassion that leads to cruelty. I think about, as you were describing, Harris, the little ones being, just abandoned. I'm picturing that image that we had here on Fox News, the video of a child that was floating down the Rio Grande River. And that, to me, just represents the level of abandonment by this administration and the policies that led to the push factors abandoning that child in the river. I think about as well how part and parcel to this administration. It's all about the blame game. So we know that veteran staffers, senior officials, contractors raised the alarm, as you described, making its way up to Becerra's desk, to HHS. What was HHS's response? No, that's a Department of Labor issue. We're not a welfare system. It reminds me of when Nadler said to that grieving mother's face, well, 50% of the killers were caught.
Madeline Brame.
There is a level of deflection and refusal of responsibility that this administration takes that is appalling. And to use your word, Kayleigh, it is obscene. But it won't end anytime soon.
And who gets lost in this, Antonio, who goes to youth group, who deserves to be able to go to school and doesn't deserve to work, who misses his grandmother.
Hey everyone, I'm Emily Campagno. Catch me and my co-hosts Harris Faulkner and Kayleigh McEnany on Outnumbered every weekday at 12 p.m. Eastern, or set your DVR. Also, don't forget to subscribe to the Fox News YouTube page for daily highlights.